Alright, so earlier this month there was another pistol brace lawsuit filed. This one's a little bit different. What we're looking at here, and this was filed by my lawyers actually, this one takes place in Florida. I'm going to call it Brandon versus ATF. Obviously there's some plaintiffs in there. One of them had the name Brandon. I'm like, that sounds perfect. So, typically in these pistol brace things, what they're specifically going after is the pistol brace itself. Many of different reasons. A lot of lawsuits will argue, you know, how many are in circulation and stuff like that. And those are all great arguments. But again, they're targeting the pistol brace itself, trying to get that legal again. Remember, the pistol brace was already a compromise with the ATF. We can't put a stock on there, but it's okay. If it's in pistol configuration, we'll put a brace on there. And then they decided that the compromise is not sufficient. Everybody needs to take them off. Essentially, a bunch of you, if you don't take them off and you don't register them, well, now you're looking at $250,000 in fines and 10 years in a federal pound-me-in-the-ass prison. Whew! Anywho, this one is a little bit different because it's not just trying to make it so the ATF can't regulate the pistol brace. It's also attacking SBRs as a whole. So, pistol braces and SBRs. Why do you feel you have the authority to regulate either of them? Another thing it's attacking is the NFA as a whole. Trying to remove SBRs off of the NFA and the GCA, and it's also attacking traveling with an NFA item. Remember, the Bruin decision said, in order for any sort of firearm to be just, it must fit text, history, and tradition around the time the Second Amendment was written. It doesn't exist. We all know this. We know there is no sort of text, history, and tradition. There is the Second Amendment, and it's pretty ironclad. Shall not be infringed. Remember again, I know I repeat this constantly in my videos, but this was from the people to the government. Not from the government to the people telling them what they could have. It was from the people to the government telling them what laws they can make. Shall not be infringed. So when you wind back in time, like as instructed in the Bruin decision, there's nothing. Nothing at all. The NFA is unconstitutional. It's over with. It's done. Now, this leads me into the plot twist. That's where the video is going to take another direction that you weren't expected, but you're probably glad you tuned in for it. So, I have had multiple viewers be like, hey, you know, my Second Amendment rights are being trampled, XYZ happened, okay? And I've reached out to like the GOA, the NRA, all those gun rights organizations, and I'm not getting any help. And they're like looking at me to answers because I have some sort of special insight knowledge. One, I don't. I really don't. I have about as much knowledge as you. But what I do know is companies like the GOA and the NRA, they're not law firms. What they are lobbyist groups, essentially. They're more than that, but essentially that's what they do. So they're not really targeted towards criminal cases. Government shows up and you have one extra cartridge in your magazine. Whether or not you realized it could take it, short answer is you're in jail and now you're fighting for your freedom. And we're talking about massive charges here. Like life-changing charges. We're not talking about probation and a small fine. We're talking about like 10 years in a federal pound-me-in-the-ass prison and $250,000. These are huge to us. Just massive. But to organizations like the GOA and the NRA, that's not what they do. They're not a law firm. They don't go around. Yeah, they might jump on a criminal case here and there. Like, for example, really rare ones. A great example would be like bump stock cases. Because it was such a small amount of criminal cases, in order to have the proper plaintiff, well, they had to jump on one of those and then they take it up. Those organizations are more about suing the government for different things. Because you got to think of it like a net, okay? So you have this net, you're dragging it through the ocean. If you want to catch the sharks, you got to have a big, huge net with really thick wires. The problems with that is all the little minnows, the criminal cases, just go right through. They don't get caught up in the net. If you were to have a small net to catch like minnows and stuff, one, it couldn't hold a shark. Two, it would instantly get filled up. They would go broke. They would run out of finances. They would go broke. That's not what they do. They don't do criminal cases. They do lawsuits against the government. Again, you know, if it's some sort of special niche criminal case or something to that effect, yeah, they'll hop onto it. Will you be one of those? Probably not. Chances are you'll be caught up in, I have no idea, crossing a state and your CCW doesn't apply. Or, you know, something like that. You're totally 100% trying to follow the law, but there's so much red tape wrapped around guns and so many laws, the average person sometimes just simply doesn't know about it. And then they get caught up in it. You have no idea how many shotguns, I'm not saying I've personally seen them, but how many customers would bring a shotgun into the shop and they have a barrel that is cut too short because they got confused between 16 inches for a rifle and 18 inches for a shotgun, and some sort of confusion happened there, or like their shotgun barrel ballooned out, and when they cut it off to get rid of the ballooning so they could still use their shotgun, which their grandpa did years ago, they bring it into the gun shop to try to sell it or something, and you're like, that's too short. You need to destroy that. For real, you're looking at 10 years in a federal pound-in-the-ass prison and $250,000 in fines because your grandpa accidentally nose-planted in the mud, didn't realize it, shot at a deer. The barrel ballooned out at like 17 inches, so that's where you cut the barrel. Like, that's the kind of stuff that people get wrapped up into, and they just don't know about it. If they knew about it, I guarantee they wouldn't bring it into a gun shop and try to sell it. Like, that's a normal thing. Or they come in, at one point in time, you could have a pistol brace on a pistol, but you couldn't have a forward grip. And they'd come in with, like, a forward grip. Now, the law's all wishy-washy, but the point is, like, people commit NFA violations constantly, and they have no idea, because there's so much red tape wrapped around this stuff. And people get caught up in it, and they're like, you know, I've been supporting the NRA or the GOA since, like, I bought a Shotgun News magazine back in 1989. Where are they? How come they're not helping me? And that's the answer. They don't do criminal. They might on a very specific case, but generally speaking, no. Criminal law is not what they do. They do lawsuits. And they're not a law firm. They're not lawyers. What they do is they lobby and stuff like that, and they catch the sharks again, like the Bruin decision. So I'm not saying they're irrelevant or we don't need them. They have their place. But when it comes to criminal law, we really don't have anything set up for that. We don't have a help button. Oh my God, like, I can't believe this just happened. This was a total accident. You know, where's my cord to pull to bring in the cavalry? And that's what's going on, what I'm about to talk to you here. So, my lawyers, they had set up a donation page. Now, this is going directly into a legal trust. This has a couple advantages. So with like the GOA or the NRA or something like that, you send the money there, you're paying rent on their building, you're paying for employees, you're paying for everyone's travel expenses. Then they have to hire a lawyer if they want to take on a particular case, so you're paying for that. And that's the big problem everybody had with the NRA, is because they were siphoning all the money off. They were buying yachts and stuff like that and claiming it as business expenses. In a legal trust, 100% of the money needs to go to a criminal case that's labeled on there. And they said Second Amendment cases, so you're not going to see money from this legal trust going to fight against PETA or something like that, unless, of course, they get into the Second Amendment realm. But the point is, 100% of the money will go to legal cases. And the reason I'm promoting this, and I believe in this particular thing, is because I've seen the results myself. My lawyers were representing me and fighting for me months before we were able to get the money from GoFundMe into a legal trust. So without being paid, they were fighting for me. Like, they jumped on immediately, which is a big deal. And they've been operating for free essentially since October. Like, I'm ultimately going to throw them some cash, obviously, and I'm going to donate to their fundraiser. But they haven't been paid since, like, October, and the reason why is because the government specifically ran me broke. Like, that was their goal, because they assumed I was going to plea bargain out. Little did they know I got the fighting spirit, and I'm not going to do that. We're going Hail Mary pass all or nothing. but they were hoping to run me broke and I would plea out. I am pretty sure that was exactly why they indicted me, because they're like, yeah, we don't have a case here. Yeah, he's innocent, but we'll just run him broke and then we'll throw a plea bargain on the table and he'll take that to try to get back with his family as soon as possible. Little underestimation on their part, but the point is, so how they did that, I can't remember if it's 30 or 40,000 pages of discovery. We'll go with the smaller number, 30,000 pages of discovery. Just so you can understand that and put that into perspective, if this printer paper was full, this is only 750 pages. This is 3 inches. 750 divided by 30,000 is 40 inches. That means there would have been a stack this tall of discovery. This tall. In every single one of those pages, you would have to go through, you would have to see what's on it, and you would have to make a note whether or not it's important, because they could just hide something in there. There's no table of contents. There's no order. There's no rhyme or reason why page 1 is related to page 2. It's all just random. It's scattered. It's like it was a PDF file, but it's like they threw it into a computer and then hit shuffle and then sent it out. And they kept dropping more and more and more discovery. Every time my lawyers would meet them, they get like another 1,500 pages on a flash drive. So, the average lawyer costs $500. That's $30,000. Let's pretend they spent 60 seconds. Just 60 seconds. That's not enough time to read through a page of discovery. We're going to say it's just 60 seconds. Now, average is between $250 and $500 an hour for a lawyer. If they would have spent $500 an hour and only 60 seconds on each page, that's $250,000 they spent just reading the discovery. Not going to court, no expert witnesses, just reading the discovery. And if they only charge $250, that's $125,000 that they spent just on discovery. You're like, well, you know they could get a paralegal or something like that. Okay, let's pretend they're only charging $10 an hour and spending a realistic time, which is about 10 minutes on a page. That's reading through the page, making a note whether or not the page is relevant or not. If it is, mark off the notes where it is relevant. So, spending 10 minutes on 30,000 pages, that's 5,000 hours. At $10 an hour, that's $50,000. Like, that's insane. And then, to run the whole thing extra broke, when we were about to go to trial, when everything was all done, all we had to do was show up and plead our case, the prosecutor dropped a superseding indictment on us. What does that mean? The whole entire case starts over. Now she can insert more discovery, she can throw new charges on there, so now they need to make new legal arguments, file new legal motions. So back in November, when everything was done, she just hit the reset button, started the whole process over again. And they've been working free, essentially, since October. That's why I believe in them. Like, I honestly think this will work. Yes, this is an experiment, and there's always the possibility of failure, but I don't think so. And not to mention, it's insured because it's in a legal trust. And on their Givesendgo, it specifically says what the money is going to go for. So say this money got spent off on some crazy whatever you have, we could sue the ever-living crap out of them. This money has to go for the legal funds. So, not only have they been basically working free on my case, you'll hear about other cases really soon. Can't talk about them yet. I gotta wait for it to go public. You got the pistol brace rule, and these are lawyers specifically going out to get the little minnows. They're not going out there with a huge dragnet trying to get sharks. They're specifically targeting, criminal cases. And should an opportunity come up, like with the pistol brace thing, they can go and throw a lawsuit out there. So you're skipping all the middlemen. It's going directly to the lawyers that need it. You're skipping the buildings that these organizations are in. You're skipping all the payroll that these organizations are in. You're skipping all the business expenses that are acquired by all these organizations. And then, with the money that's left over, they pick and choose what cases they want to do. And then they send a team of lawyers, which may not even be Second Amendment lawyers. They may just be a lawyer they decided to pick because you live out in the sticks, and the only lawyer in your area knows nothing about firearms, so now they got to do like basically on-the-job training. The point is, there's a bunch of money hemorrhaging before you actually get the lawyers in court, and that's saying they pick up that particular criminal case, which they're likely not going to do. Now, I'm not saying they're irrelevant. They have their place. They do advertising, lobbying, like they are a very important part of the Second Amendment, but the more of these we have to go after individual niche things, the stronger we'll be as a whole. This is more about criminal cases and the occasional lawsuit that may appear. So if this becomes insanely successful, you could call them and be like, oh my God, you know, I brought a shotgun into a gun shop. My grandpa had sawed it down to 17 inches. The gun shop owner called the ATF on me. Now I'm incarcerated in prison awaiting trial with nowhere to turn. You'd call them up and they'd swoop in. I mean, obviously they're going to have to pick and choose their cases. They're probably not going to like take a case where you're like, oh, I was cruising through the hood and I got pulled over with a bunch of Glock switches. I had 2 bodies in the trunk and a backseat full of cocaine. They're probably not going to take that case. The point is, in the case where it's clear your civil rights have been trampled, you were clear you weren't trying to break the law or anything like that, like it just so happened to pay out that way, that would be an excellent candidate. And then you'd have an emergency like help lever you could pull. So, now this again, you know, maybe they use some of it on my case, I don't know. Like this is going to the whole blanket thing. But me specifically, if you want to support me, that's by these patches. I'm trying to raise as much money as I can to cover my own hotels, my own traveling, all my own expenses, so I don't drain their funds anymore because I know what they're involved in. Like, again, I can't talk about a lot of things, but I know that this money needs to be allocated in other places. So to support me directly, shop at onlytacticalfans.com. To support this new experiment, which I believe strongly will work, go to their Givesendgo. Anyway, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.